Where else?
So what is, Jodi, the calculus here for Netanyahu? In Israel, yesterday, thousands of people, they're on the streets, they have tents out. There is a groundswell of anger there about the hostages, about how the war is being carried out, about the sense that maybe Israelis don't feel safer even after all of this. What's the end game for Netanyahu?
Well, I mean, Bobby is right that Netanyahu is not yielding to pressure and that he has his own political interests at heart. But this is the first time since October 7th that we've seen this kind of groundswell and that it has been directed at Netanyahu as opposed to purely a call for bringing the hostages home. And so they've said they're going to be out there for 4 days. They're sleeping outside. It's raining there. And I think I think this may be a turning point. It's, you don't want to get too predictive, but while most Israelis do strongly support the war and despite the level of devastation that it has wrought in Gaza, they don't support Netanyahu. I mean, poll after poll after poll shows that he would barely get 17 seats if there were another election today, that his party would not be able to make
But you think that
governing
maybe
coalition.
He would be replaced by somebody who is not more moderate?
Well, he would likely be replaced by someone whose basic framework for Gaza and for the Palestinian question feels familiar, but the coalition that they would put together would likely be very different. It would not include the right-wing nationalists that are in this government. And there's another big divide over how the Orthodox are integrated into society, and I think they would likely have a different position there and not include the Orthodox party. So it wouldn't look exactly the same, but it's not like they're going to, put down their weapons the next day if there's an election.
Yeah, I think Jodi is exactly right. No matter who is in power, there is a common consensus around what needs to be done about Hamas. And it is very close to Netanyahu's own position on the matter of what needs to be done in Gaza, how the Palestinians are to be dealt with. There's not a lot of daylight between Netanyahu and some of his opponents. So he may go, and mind you, his departure would be a major moment in Israeli politics. This is a man who has loomed large over Israeli politics through most of the adult lifetimes of the large proportion of the population. So it would be a big deal.
He is the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history. But I think what you are seeing on the street today, and it hasn't really shown up in polls, and it certainly hasn't shown up in response to questions about the war, but you do get a sense of this anger and anguish and a little bit, I think, beginning to see an exhaustion from the war and from the international reaction to it. So
all of this is happening. Netanyahu is making some moves, particularly when it comes to the press. And a lawmaker in Israel passed a law this afternoon that would allow them to shut down any foreign media outlets that they deem to be a national security risk. This is something that is viewed as being targeted right at Al Jazeera. Netanyahu today called Al Jazeera a terrorist channel. The Committee to Protect Journalists obviously pushing back on that, saying that this contributes to a climate of self-censorship and hostility toward the press, a trend that has escalated since the Israel-Gaza war began. There is a bit of a pattern here when leaders feel under threat, they go after the press. I mean, is that what's going on?
For sure. I mean, let's remind ourselves that for almost a year before the October 7th attacks, Israel was roiled by protests over Netanyahu's move to undermine the democratic infrastructure of the country.
That judicial reform
Correct.
proposal.
And this is another anti-democratic, anti-free speech, anti-freedom of the press move that is shocking to the West and to many Israelis. Now, why does he want to shut down Al Jazeera? What does he say that makes it a terrorist network or an inciting network or a threat to national security? They're showing what's going on in Gaza, which is not available widely on the TV news in Israel.
And it's a huge part of how this story is being perceived around the world. When you see the images, pretty raw and unfiltered.
Yeah, and especially in the Arab world. And I would add that apart from being thoroughly undemocratic, there's also from the point of view of Israel's own interests in the Arab world, this is counterproductive. Al Jazeera is one of the few Arab channels where Israeli spokesmen actually go on their air and try to explain Israel's position. Other Arab channels don't even make that much effort. So if Israel wants its case to be made in the Arab world, and remember, Israel now has many more allies in the Arab palaces, if not in the street, than it did thanks to the Abraham Accords. If Israel wants its point of view to be heard, Al Jazeera is probably its best bet in the Arab world. So shutting Al Jazeera down, demonizing Al Jazeera like this, makes no sense. You can't be calling a channel, oh, this is a terrorist channel. Meanwhile, your spokesman is going on that channel and talking to their anchors and presenting your point of view. If it's a terrorist channel, why are you even engaging with it?
Why bother? Yeah, it's such a good point. We have to leave it there. Bobby Ghosh and Jodi Rudoren, thank you both very much for the interesting conversation.